Welcome back to Economics. This is Dr. Kling. Last time we discussed monetarism, but we hadn't yet really defined money. Since everyone uses money, we know what it is, but actually economists have thought a lot about money, and there probably are a lot more controversies about this notion of money than just about anything else in economics. So I'll try to steer clear of as many of the controversies as I can while giving sort of the economic view of money. Suppose we have three people in the economy. Suppose we have a butcher, a baker, and a candlestick maker. And suppose it turns out that today the candlestick maker would like some meat. So this is what people want. So I'll put this is a row of what people want. So the candlestick maker wants meat. The butcher wants bread, and the baker wants candlesticks. Well, they can't trade with each other using their own products. The candlestick maker has candlesticks, but the butcher doesn't want candlesticks. The butcher wants bread. Butcher has meat and wants bread, but the baker doesn't want meat, instead wants candlesticks. So you can see what the problem is. And what's needed to enable trade is something called a medium of exchange. Somebody is going to have to temporarily hold something they don't want and then later on trade it for something they do want. So maybe the candlestick maker will trade candlesticks to the baker for some bread, hold on to the bread temporarily, and then trade it to the butcher and get meat. And so what emerges, instead of using one of these physical products as a medium of exchange, it's more convenient to use money as a medium of exchange. So money might be something that has no intrinsic value. In the old days you had gold, which had some intrinsic value, but now we use paper money, which has no intrinsic value, but it is valuable as a medium of exchange. So if all three of these people will take money, then they can trade with each other even though their wants don't coincide. There isn't this what's called the double coincidence of wants. So even if the candlestick maker and the butcher don't right now want each other's products, they can both exchange for money, and everybody can exchange for money, and trade can take place. So first of all, money is a medium of exchange. In order for it to work as a medium of exchange, it has to be at least a temporary store of value. That is, if we saw with hyperinflation, when money is losing its value rapidly, things just get out of control, and its value as a medium of exchange goes way down. During hyperinflations, people try to use foreign currency, they fall back on barter, they do everything, just about anything they can, to avoid taking this money that they know is going to decline in value in days or maybe even hours. So it has to be a store of value. It has to maintain its value pretty steadily, which is why people say that it's important not to print too much money, because you have too much money chasing too few goods. So keeping the money supply reasonably stable helps stabilize its value. And finally, money turns into a unit of account. That is, people start thinking of the value of things in money terms. So instead of saying, I wonder how many candlesticks, let's say the butcher's saying, instead of how much bread my meat is worth or how many candlesticks my meat is worth, they think in terms of how many dollars my meat is worth, and then what my dollars can buy in terms of candlesticks or bread. So it becomes a measure of the value of things. And when when we're talking about inflation, we're observing what happens to the unit of account. That is, if the price level doubles, then all the units of account have sort of changed. But you could imagine a world in which the dollar price of meat, candlesticks, and bread all goes up by the same amount, so that the relative prices, the cost of meat in terms of candlesticks or meat in terms of bread, stays the same, but their price in terms of dollars all goes up. And that's kind of a pure inflation. That's a pure change in the unit of account. And so what's sort of weird is that by changing the supply of money, so if the supply of money goes way, way up, that changes what happens to money as a unit of account. That is, that would mean that the dollar price of all goods and services eventually will go way up as well. So the unit of account, I mean, when I think of a unit of account, I don't think of anything as having any kind of physical manifestation, but it turns out the supply of money, it sort of does. It sort of does have a physical manifestation. So let me then introduce a couple of the controversies about money. The first controversy is, how can money end up affecting relative prices or affecting total output? And the idea that people have come up with is that some prices are sticky. That means they change more slowly than others. So one example would be wages versus commodities. Commodities, things like gold, copper, wheat, oil. The observation is that wages move slowly. So wages move slowly. So that means that so when prices move quickly, the real wage or the purchasing power of wages changes in the opposite direction, at least for a while. So what that's this purchasing power of wages, or the real wage, is sometimes written as W over P. And so when prices rise suddenly, the wage itself will be sticky, so the real wage will go down. The demand for labor will go up. Firms will see that they can get labor cheaply and will get more employment and output. And that is the foundation, if you will, at least in the textbook story, of the short-run aggregate supply curve. The story behind this short-run aggregate supply curve, which has prices and output going up together when aggregate demand goes up, is that aggregate demand goes up, and that makes prices go up. With wages sticky, that gives you a temporary decline in real wages, which gives you labor demand, which I'll write LD, going up, which means that employment and Y, real output, will go up. That's Y for real output. So that's the story of the aggregate supply curve. And then the role that the supply of money plays in that, it's on the aggregate demand side. When the supply of money goes up from AD1 to AD2, that triggers this process of prices going up, real wages declining, and employment and output going up. So that's sort of this theory of aggregate supply. It sort of raises a question of, why would workers accept these lower wages just because the government raised the money supply? And that controversy became pretty strong in the 1970s. There were some economists who argued that would be very silly behavior for workers to make, and so so there was a big brouhaha over that, which I can go into later, but I'm not going to in this portion. So I want to actually switch to the other controversy, which is what exactly is money? Okay, so we look around and we would probably think, well, what we see are dollar bills and coins, and that's called currency. So it's your dollar bills and coins. Economists are not very happy with that definition because there are so many other ways that people make payments. Remember, we want to focus on medium of exchange. And even 50 years ago, a big medium of exchange consisted of money in checking accounts. That could be used to make exchanges. And some people pointed out that it was very easy to move money from savings to checkings, so some people argued we also should include savings accounts. Nowadays, how do you make most of your payments? A lot of people pay for things using credit cards, which implies that credit lines ought to be viewed as money. So where do you draw the line between what's money and what's not money? And I don't think that controversy has been really settled. I think economists really try to dodge that by focusing on other things, but this notion of what is money really has never been quite settled within the economics profession. So you have a lot of disagreement about what it is. So you'll have two economists who, let's say, both subscribe to monetarism, who say that nominal GDP is determined by the supply of money, and those economists will completely disagree about what's going on with the money supply, because one of them will be looking at one measure of the money supply and another one will be looking at a different measure. And we'll have to get into that a bit more when we talk about the role of the Federal Reserve in creating money, because we'll have to talk about what it exactly is that the Federal Reserve is creating. But we'll do that next time.